The Classic Tetris World Championships for the year 2021 was nothing short of insane, and throughout all that madness, there was one game that stood out above the rest. Dog versus Pokenerd, game 1, but both players got a 1.3 million. Dog ended up winning by just around 9,000 points. But what if I told you that the outcome of that game, and by extension the match, and maybe even the rest of the tournament, could have been different if Pokenerd had just done one single move? That's what we're going to be going into today in today's episode of Classic Tetris Matches Analyzed. So before we get started, I would like to read out a quick disclaimer. So any questions or anything that are brought up in the comments can be answered by the disclaimer because it has happened in the past and it's likely going to happen in the future. But without further ado, let's read this quick disclaimer and we'll be getting right into our match breakdown. Disclaimer. The goal of CTMA is to analyze and compare the potential different outcomes of a game or a match from CTWC. One way I accomplish this is by giving hypothetical situations that could happen after a set adjustment was made. During same piece set matches, I may go ahead more than 2 pieces in the sequence to kind of flesh out how things could play out. However, predominantly adjustments and mistakes are corrected on the first and or second piece. And with that being said, the goal of CTMA is to explore stacking theory and to increase the stacking knowledge of the general public as well as players of all skill levels. With the disclaimer now being read, it is time for us to jump into our exciting double 1.3 match between Pokenerd and Dogplayingtetris. Alright, so here we are going to be breaking down the highest scoring match in CTWC history, Dog versus Pokenerd. Now, quick disclaimer, Dog and Pokenerd are both amazing players, and even though I am going over things that could have been done better, there was so much that they did correctly, and even a lot of stuff that they did that exceeded what you would call good Tetris. They did a lot of this amazing stuff, and so I don't want this analysis and breakdown to take away from it, but there is one thing that Pokenerd could have done that would have allowed him to win this match with potentially even a commanding lead. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Our first kind of situation comes from Dog, and I'm gonna say situation, really I mean scenarios, because none of these are really situations with the exception of one thing on Pokenerd's end. But what happens is Dog gets into this scenario where a T-spin is set up, and expertly Dog is able to navigate out of that T-spin dependency and knock down a Tetris at the cost of 2 burned lines. So naturally, what is something that Dog could have potentially done different to have avoided burning those lines in the first place? So if we take a look right here, Dog has the T-piece. Now, there are various different locations that this T-piece can go. However, in order to avoid burning and to kind of have a clean stack or a stack that is on the cleaner side, the easiest solution would be to put the T-piece in columns 6 and 7, and to put the L piece flat in columns 2 through 4. This is, of course, an alternative placement that comes with the pros of you not having to burn for your Tetris. However, it does leave you with a slightly divided stack, but when you're as fast as a tapper as Dog, or you are a roller, basically, or even if you're a DAS player with phenomenal DAS control, this particular stack wouldn't necessarily be the most dangerous, but you would have to be mindful. However, despite that Dog setting up a T-spin dependency, he resolved it absolutely amazingly and avoided a costly situation walking away from that dependency with only 2 burns. So next, we're going to talk about something on Poke's side. Now, this is not a, massive, oh my gosh, they had to burn, 10 lines or, something crazy like this. This is once again just another 2-lined burn on Poke's end, and this comes from making a potential adjustment. This adjustment could end up being friendlier for the stack, or it could, in rare cases, I say rare cases because it's likely that it wouldn't end up unfriendly to the stack. However, it could have avoided Pokenerd burning 2 lines. But we also do got to keep in mind with the context of what this is. This is a competitive match. You want to set yourself for the best chances of success, even if that means taking a few burns here and there. And of course, few burns can be taken in order to have, you know, a clean stack. So it's better to, you know, take 1 burn and have a clean stack so you can score the next 4 Tetrises without burning, as opposed to trying stack perfect for those 4 Tetrises, and then your stack gets into a position where you're burning for the next 16 or so lines. So what ends up happening is Pokenerd knocks down this Tetris, gets the eyepiece, and is going to place the eyepiece in column 8. The reason why this is an issue is because the Z piece is coming up next, and as a result, Pokenerd is going to have to burn 1 line immediately, with another line that gets burned later on to get Tetris ready after placing the L in the downwards vertical oriented position. So what is something that Pokenerd could have done to potentially negate the 2-line burn? Well, Pokenerd could have obviously made the adjustment. So right here, instead of the eyepiece going in column 7, the eyepiece could have gone in column 9, and the Z piece could have gone in column 7 through 8. That's an adjustment that can be made, and this particular adjustment, it's a lower risk adjustment, but it has a very high probability of success. Given this particular sequence, he's going to be forced to burn with the current placement that he has. With addition to this being level 18, Pokenerd can stack very high, and he can hold out for some of those pieces. It'd be a different story if we're talking about level 19 or level 29 speeds. However, at the same time, Pokenerd did want to keep a cohesive stack, and so then 2 burns, it's nothing, you know, to fret about, but it can make a difference, and we'll see why later on. Next is actually going to come from Dog's end, and it's just Dog missing out on an adjustment. Had he seen this adjustment, he would have walked away with 1 less burn. So what he does is he goes to the burn, fixes up the left side with the T piece, gets the J piece, and he's going to end up scoring the Tetris. So what is something that Dog could have done to potentially negated having to burn that 1 singular line? And we're about to see that right now. So Dog, he's going to get Tetris ready, knocks down the Tetris, and what's going to happen is he does that burn. With the T piece next, the L, you could do an L overhang in column 7 and 8 and go for the T-tuck in column 8, 9. He'll be Tetris ready sooner, and he commits 1 less burn. Now, keep in mind, it is just 1 burn, and what Dog actually did here, I feel like it is definitely a justified placement. It's not, you know, bad. I don't want anyone to me coming this across as, you know, criticizing their placements and saying, oh, these placements are bad because they resulted in a 1 or 2 lines. No, I'm trying to say, you know, here are different ways that could have potentially been solved. What Dog ends up doing is Dog places the T piece on the left hand side, which actually makes the left hand side a little bit more friendly, and it builds it up higher than the rest of the stack. So Dog is in a competitively safe position. So next up isn't necessarily any inaccuracies or alternative placements that could have been done by Dog and or Pokenerd. It's rather a chain of adjustments that Dog did, which the IQ on this is actually galaxy brain. So here, you know, things start off pretty normal, right? You know, Dog gets this L piece. Now, this L piece, there are many places that can go. The stack is looking absolutely, you know, it's a good looking stack. Heck, if he just wanted to be safe, he can put the L piece in his current orientation in columns 4 through 5. What Dog decides to do is he decides to rotate it. Now, what does rotating the L piece do? Rotating the L piece sets up an overhang for a tuck situation that can only be solved by either the J piece or the I piece. And the J piece so happens to be up next. So now he gives himself the opportunity to either go for a horizontal oriented tuck or a vertical oriented tuck. And The reason why I point out that there's two different tucks that you can do with this is because both of these are situational. For a vertical oriented tuck, you would generally be hoping to have the eyepiece next, so then you'll be able to get Tetris ready without burning. The horizontal oriented tuck, if you don't have a good piece that follows after the J, then it's always, you can always, you know, go the horizontal tuck. Alternatively, you can also do the vertical J tuck in order to kind of build up a double wide well so you can burn to get Tetris ready. It's a safer approach. So, you know, Dog sets up this overhang, which that in itself was already good. And oh look, we have the long bar next. Dog, with only 2 cells to go, makes the adjustment, tucks it underneath, gets Tetris ready, maintains the meticulousness of his stack, and knocks down a Tetris without having to burn, maintaining an 84% Tetris rate. Now, that's not the only crazy adjustment that happens. In fact, we're about to have another good adjustment by Pokenerd. And with this adjustment, if Sodium's watching, this is going to be a shout out to you, since I know you absolutely love this adjustment. This adjustment that Pokenerd does is known as 5 and below, because it takes inspiration of the 5 and below sign. If you don't know what that is, look it up. And so what happens is Pokenerd, he, you know, knocks down the Tetris, and now he's going to try and get set up for his next one. So he gets it right here. Originally, he's going to lay this J piece flat, which this great placement. There isn't necessarily anything wrong. But then Pokenerd recognizes, he's like, hey, I have an O piece next. Let me just make an adjustment with like only 2 cells to go and set up this overhang for the O, so then the O piece can tuck right underneath. This one singular adjustment is going to allow Pokenerd to build up to be Tetris ready without having to take any burns and maintain a 94% Tetris rate. So next thing actually comes up on Dog's end, and this, once again, is not necessarily Dog making an inaccuracy or anything. It's an alternative placement that could have led to 1 less burn. I mean, it's only just 1 burn, so nothing real major there. So Dog, you know, is going to start building up, and you're going to see he's going to kind of build like this T-like chasm here after getting several L's. So he gets all the right pieces, and he's going to decide to place this S piece over to the left-hand side. Creates a couple overhangs and sets up multiple overhangs, nailing the tucks, throwing pieces all the way over to the left, hitting the spin, hitting another spin, gets Tetris ready, and knocks down the Tetris. So that sequence alone, the fact that he was able to solve that, is absolutely, you know, it's just insane. But there is a way that we can simplify this and take less amount of burns and potentially have a better stack. And what way is that? Well, that is if we do one of the most overpowered placements in the game, known as S flat. If Dog were to do S flat, the T piece, S flat in columns 8 through 10, the T piece that comes up next would be able to immediately burn out the line or delay burn that we created, and we are Tetris ready, and we also have a very clean stack to work with. However, like I said, what Dog did, the way that it was solved, only resulted in, you know, a couple burn lines. This would result in 1 less burn line, if I'm not mistaken. Just the alternative placement that Dog could have done. Now, next thing actually comes, once again, from Pokenerd doing another 5 and below placement. As you can see, this J piece, there's plenty of ways to get Tetris ready. What Pokenerd decides to do at the last possible second, or not necessarily the last possible second, he decides to go ahead and create the overhang and sets himself up for another O tuck. 2 5 belows in this game. Kind of crazy. So everything's going to be fine. The next thing that pops up isn't going to be until to around 4 minutes into the game, which is actually from Pokenerd. Now, this particular adjustment, it doesn't necessarily do things any more efficient because Pokenerd didn't burn any lines regardless. However, in the case, it is always good to also recognize this adjustment that I'm about to go over. Pokenerd right here, clean pieces, getting good pieces. Right here, decides to place the T piece to the left. I piece is coming up next, so what he could have done, as opposed to placing the T piece left, is he could have done a tightening adjustment. Put the T piece in column 5 and 6, creating an I piece dependency, and then putting the eyepiece in column 7, immediately filling in the dependency. This will lead to a cleaner stack. You'll get Tetris ready faster. However, no burns were, I mean, I can show you guys. Pokenerd had to do absolutely no burns getting Tetris ready, and the stack actually maintained relative cleanness, so Pokenerd was fine. It's just a different way, an alternative placement that it could allow for potentially a little bit more efficiency. I mean, you can't really get more efficient than 0 burns, but I'm sure you get the point I'm trying to convey. Next thing that we have by Dog is actually, it's about to happen right now. Dogs gets an S piece, and if you look on the board, there really isn't too many good spots for an S piece. You can try and go for S flat to, you know, set up a delay burn and build up the rest of the stack. However, that requires burning. And in this case, Pokenerd has a 6,000 point advantage with a true pace advantage of around 40,000. Or if we were to assume that Pokenerd would have continued to play perfect, around 50,000. So Dog knows that he needs to avoid burning as many lines as possible, and given that the O piece is next, check this out. He sets up the overhang, gets all the right pieces, and does his best to kind of, you know, solve. Now he does set up a S double, which, I mean, had to be done. There wasn't really you can done with the center of the stack, but with an S piece that there wasn't really too many good placements for, I really feel that Dog did a fantastic job choosing that overhang choosing that overhang in order to solve that situation. So, up next, this is where we start to get in some interesting stuff. We're starting to get into where things are starting to become a little bit more costly, like 3 and 5 burns. There wasn't too many burns made because of missed adjustments or mistakes. Both of these players played incredibly solid. I can't stress that enough. But our next thing is going to actually come from Pokenerd. And so what's going to happen is Pokenerd is going to set up an overhang. In setting up this overhang, he's also going to set up another overhang. And actually, I'll let the sequence play out. This is how it looks. Now, Pokenerd does end up getting the double tuck, and he does end up resolving it. Doesn't want to take a triple. Ends up, from this one particular situation, he has to do 5 burns, which gets rid of a little bit of his advantage. So remember we said earlier he was at a 50,000 point pace, potential pace lead. Now he's only at a 39,000 point real-time lead. So what are some ways that he could have avoided burning, or maybe even just minimized it? Well, the first thing that Pokey would have to do is he could have done an S spin tuck setup. This is assuming right after the J, he could have tucked the S piece underneath, and he could have either done a T spin tuck or an S spin tuck, preferably a T spin tuck, as it results into a cleaner board. But those were the 2 options he could have done out of that. That was a possibility. The only downside to that is it requires getting another S and a T. The only other solution that I could think of is simply avoid the overhang in general. Instead of going J piece vertical like that, you could either, lay it flat in columns, columns 6 through 8. Lay it flat in columns 6 through 8. You could, if you really wanted to go aggressive, you could stand it up in columns 8 and 9. There are definitely a lot more ways to solve this that would lead to a cleaner stack, assuming the pieces complied. There are different ways that this could have been solved and avoid setting up this overhang, which this overhang can only be solved cleanly by a few pieces. Otherwise, you would have to rely on getting certain pieces later on. That's really, the best solution that I could really think of for this particular situation. As a result, this cost Pokenerd 5 burns and loses out on a Tetris of his advantage. However, he still has a massive advantage with 96% Tetris rate and up by 86%. The next thing is actually going to come from Dog, and Dog, as a result of this, is going to end up burning 3 lines. So he knocks down this Tetris. He's going to get Tetris ready. Now, right here, he's going to lay the T piece flat on the left-hand side. Generally, you want to avoid this because it kind of gives, it gives your stack, a jagged look, and it could end up being costly if you don't get the specific jagged piece that you need. And so in Dog's case, he has to burn a double, knocks down a Tetris, and then I believe he has to burn a single because of how long he is waiting for a J piece or an I piece. And definitely the situation, it could have been avoided had there been a slight change in placements. So what I mean by a slight change is, you know, Dog gets Tetris ready, and instead of going T-piece all the way in columns 1 through 3, Dog could go T-piece in 4, 5, and then go the J flat in 1 through 3. That's really the only alternative placement that I can see that could lead to a more efficient way to deal with this scenario. But that's going to be basically almost it that we hear from Dog, because his post transition, I'm not going to show all of his post transition because this is a breakdown. We're trying to get the key points, but you have to watch Dog's post transition. We're going to do the mathematical breakdown at the end of this, but Dog's post transition is really what won him this game here. So we're actually going to talk about how Pokenerd could have got, if I'm not mistaken, the first 700k transition in CTWC history. However, he missed out on so many opportunities that could have led to this. So right now, he has no burns to give if you wanted to get the 700k transition. So here's what happens. He does this. He throws the T-piece all the way over to the left, and I think he recognizes it with a head shake. Creates a dependency for the Z piece, now creates another L piece dependency, and puts himself in a situation where he's not going to be able to kind of stay clean. So as a result, burns 3 lines and still has to do a little bit of burning and has to burn 5 lines before the next Tetris, kind of almost getting, or not almost getting rid, diminishing the pace lead that he has by being behind in Dog. So how could a Pokenerd got the 700k transition? Well, there's really one simple thing, and I really feel like after looking back at this again, he was shaking his head because he missed out on it. All Pokenerd had to do after this was, as soon as he got this T-piece, he needed to place it in columns 2 through 4 and go J-piece to the left. This gives the stack the best chance of being able to get that last Tetris as well as have a clean board. But as a result, Pokenerd still is going to fall a little bit short, as there really isn't anything else to do here. Now, another thing that could be done in this particular situation, although 700k is not possible, is whenever we get into this particular situation, when Pokenerd does this, at this point, it's best to just take the S double and try and keep a clean stack. I mean, this O piece isn't necessarily the most friendly afterwards, but taking the S double here, it gives you the best chance of success. And so now we get into the post transition, where there's only 3 points that I have, and 2 of these are key points. In fact, we're getting to the moment where Pokenerd essentially gave Dog a chance to win this game. And when I say gave Dog a chance to win this game, there was a lot of scoring potential that Pokenerd lost. How much? We'll get into there shortly. But first things first, we have to point out just something really insane that Dog pulls off. The stacking awareness is really, really good here for Dog. So right here, you know, Dog's on level 21, gets the I piece, and originally is going to place it in column 7, but sees that the S piece is next and adjusts it to column 9, gets the S piece, gets the T piece, clean board, and doesn't have to burn to get Tetris ready. You know, something minor, just being able to see that adjustment really ended up paying off. And that's really all we got to see from Dog. Once again, I highly encourage, if you're watching this, if you want to see some incredible post-transition play, you have to watch Dog's end on this. But now we get into the thing. This is the key moment that is going to force Pokenerd to essentially give Dog a really strong chance of winning this first game, despite having such a quote-unquote massive advantage. And why do I say that? This next thing that Pokenerd runs into cost him 17 lines. And if a 1 adjustment was made, the 17 lines wouldn't have to be burned. So right here, this is the key moment. he decides to create a hole in the stack. He gets the Tetris, and the hole doesn't necessarily get resolved immediately. And the hole kind of perpetuates itself to where it just continues to grow. He's trying to set up for a center well, but this won't be a Tetris. And from this moment forward, Pokenerd is going to burn a tremendous amount of lines. And this is going to allow Dog an opportunity to, you know, take advantage and really kind of diminish Pokenerd's such a massive lead that he had in terms of pace and potential is going to diminish that for Pokenerd. So Pokenerd's clean now. What is that adjustment? If you guys didn't catch it, what was the adjustment that Pokenerd had to have done to avoid burning 17 lines? That's almost 2 full levels where you're not scoring, but your opponent is. Let's check it out. So right here, gets the J piece, and he gets another. Pokenerd needed to pull this J piece back to the right in columns 5 and 6, so then he'd have a place for the L piece in columns 3 and 4. Upon doing that, Pokenerd would have been able to stay Tetris ready and have a clean stack. However, the hole was generated, and this causes Pokenerd to enter in a burn. Now, there are some situations where Pokenerd could have potentially got out a little bit faster, and this comes right around here after doing this. Instead of trying to kind of avoid burn, Pokenerd is trying his best to be efficient as dig. It might be best for him to, you know, just place the L in columns 4 through 5 and place the I in column 5 to try and burn out. Or even in doing that, he burns the only 2 lines, and then he can start scoring row 2 Tetrises from this point forward. Because of that, because he didn't go for that, the burn gets perpetuated for, I believe, 5 more lines, because at this point he had already burned 12 lines. Or no, it gets perpetuated for more than 5 more lines. And now here's another situation where Pokenerd could have actually gone out just a little bit more efficiently. Right after taking this burn, this S piece could have gone in column 6 and 7, and the I piece in column 5, burning out a line, giving him a chance to burn down. Unfortunately, this does not happen either, and so the burn is perpetuated just for a little while longer, and you can see Pokenerd is not necessarily too happy. Now, this was very costly for Pokenerd, but he's still in the game. However, there was one situation there's one situation that put Pokenerd into a little bit of a bind, forcing level 29 play to happen. And had this situation not happened, it is quite possible that Pokenerd would have easily won because of only being separated from Dog's score by only a couple thousand points. And this happens on level 27. Going into level 27, things are looking pretty clean for Pokenerd. And then he makes a mistake. Pokenerd decides to go J vertical right here, and this kind of complicates the stack to where he needs certain pieces. A hole is now generated in the stack. He now has to burn 5 lines from this. 5 lines means you just missed out on 30,000 points. And that's 30,000 points that's 30,000 points more that you're going to have to chase down as long as Dog continues to play perfect, which we all know how Dog's level 19, his post-transition play is. He does play perfect. Dog is unable to really score any lines because he holds out for the long bar. Long bar doesn't come. So now it's up to Pokenerd. Now, what could have been done in that situation on 27 for Pokenerd to potentially avoid burning 5 lines and having a chance to maybe beat Dog by the time level 29 hit, or even only have to take a couple of burns? Well, what Pokenerd could have done, it's just really simple. Instead of going for that J placement, instead of going for that J vertical, he could have gone for J vertical in the upright position in 5 through 6. This would kind of create a valley type formation, and the T piece will also have somewhere to go. I mean, he could throw the T piece wherever he would like, but this would give Pokenerd wouldn't necessarily run into this situation because the stack would be a little bit more cohesive, and you don't have a valley that you have to fill in order to A, get Tetris ready, and B, to just keep the stack cohesive. So as a result, Pokenerd is going to be trailing Dog going into level 29. Now, there is one thing that happens on level 29 that could have allowed Pokenerd to burn out. However, 29 is still, even though, despite that players are able to play on it now, it is still a very, very difficult speed. And so it's understandable if these players don't catch it. It's, you know, and in this case where, you know, you're about to get a 1.3 in comp, it's very understandable. So right here, Pokenerd goes to level 29 and starts to burn down, has to chase down 30,000 points. Now, this is good so far. Right here, yes. Now, right here, all you had to do was to not even rotate, but move it over once, and then use the S to burn. Instead, decides to just burn that line immediately in hopes that an eyepiece will come and help burn out that triple, which it does, but the stack is starting to get a little bit dirty, and now this is when it's important that Pokenerd executes. And getting to that left, he's able to get 1,000, one more line, but after it, that's it. And Dog is going to take this game. But for perspective on how monumental that mistake on 22 and the mistake on 27 were, we got to go and break this down mathematically. Now that we've already broke down all the placements, we got to get into the mathematics of it. Dog transitioned to level 19 at 656,000. Had the corrections been made, it is possible that Dog could have transitioned a Tetris higher around. Could have transitioned a Tetris higher. For Pokenerd, had corrections been made, it is possible Pokenerd could have transitioned around 730,000 because there was 45,000 points missed out due to either burning into transition or missing out on a couple of adjustments. So regardless, Dog had played very well. It's just with the way that he stacked, he would have been able to transition with around a 690-ish transition, while Pokenerd would have been looking at a 730. Now, in the post-transition, Dog managed to get 653,000, while Pokenerd only got 579,000. And Pokenerd, Dog, like I said, played 19 beautifully, and there's actually nothing that I saw on Dog's end that could have allowed him to be more efficient outside of just playing more aggressive. But even then, this is a competitive Tetris match. You can't overextend. Pokenerd, on the other hand, is definitely a different story, because Pokenerd had quite a few things leading from the burn into level 19, the 17 line dig on level 22 through level 24, and then of course the last misdrop on 27 that really took points away. As a result, Pokenerd ended up giving just about 172,000 points in the post-transition in potential. This is, of course, with the assumption that players are able to fill the gap that was caused due to burning with max efficiency. This isn't necessarily a reflection of what they could have scored. But with Pokenerd giving up 170,000 points of scoring potential, he could have actually just blown Dog out of the water. He was only shy of Dog's points by 9,000, but it was that one placement on level 22 that set him back. 17 burn lines is a lot, and then 27 forced Pokenerd to have to chase down on level 29. But that will had Pokenerd just played either one of those two sections a little bit differently, a little bit more efficiently, then we'd be looking at Pokenerd winning game one against Dog, as opposed to Dog winning game one up against Pokenerd. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how Pokenerd could have beat Dog in the highest scoring match in CTWC history. If you made it this far in the video, start your comment with 5 and below, because Pokenerd did a couple of 5 belows. Anyways, once again, I wanted to say thank you all so much for watching. These actually take a lot of effort. I hand animate all the onboard demonstrations or whatever. Those are all animated by hand. I'm not using any software to do it. I have a very complex system going into Photoshop. All that stuff is hand animated. So if you really like it, then, you know, be sure to leave a like. Second, if you want to see more content like this, then, you know, let me know down in the comments. I'm also going to be, by the time this video releases, there's going to be channel memberships open, which is a way that you can support me and allows me to dedicate more times to awesome breakdowns like this, because I want to break down a lot of what happened at CTWC 2021. There is so much high-level Tetris that happened that being able to kind of go take a deep dive and really just see how players are able to play at this high level, I think it'd be beneficial not only to me, but also to all players as well as the general audience. So, like I said, if you like the video, leave a like. Comment if you made it this far. Comment down 5 and below, and let me know if there's a particular game you might want to see me break down next. I do have some on the list, but hey, if you become a channel member, I'll definitely consider putting yours up first. Or there might be a chance that I upload it privately only for members. We'll see. Share with your friends that are into Tetris. Maybe they like to see how in-depth that Tetris can really be. I'm aiming to get a video uploaded every week, whether that's a new highlighted or video. And if you're subscribed, that, you know, lets me know that you want to see more content, as well as you'll be notified next time I upload a video, as well as, you know, insiders and stuff like that. Anyways, my name is Michael, better known as ITZsharky, and I'll see you all in the next video.